A legacy of lies. How one secret shattered the Corinthos Cerullo Quartermain families. In the hallowed halls of General Hospital, secrets often lie dormant like landmines, silent until they detonate. And when they do, the shockwaves rip through generations. The revelation that Giovanni, known to his friends simply as Gio, is the biological child of Brook and Dante was not only explosive, it was ruinous. A young man, full of hope and promise, had his world obliterated in a moment of careless revelation. For Gio, who had spent his life believing in a narrative carefully woven by the adults around him, the truth struck like a betrayal too cruel to bear. But behind the devastation were two women, Lois and Lulu, whose actions, though rooted in vastly different motivations, led to a tragedy of identity, trust, and irreversible damage. To understand the full gravity of the fallout, one must begin years earlier, before Gio was even aware of who he truly was, before Brook could fathom the consequences of youthful decisions, and long before Dante ever imagined fatherhood with someone he barely knew had even happened. Brook was 15 when her life was upended by an unexpected pregnancy. In a world dominated by legacy and public image, her family, particularly her mother Lois, took swift action. Together, they made the agonizing decision to put the child up for adoption, a choice that, on its face, seemed driven by love, protection, and responsibility. But as time would reveal, that decision was only the beginning of a labyrinth of lies. Rather than trusting the structured process of a closed adoption, Lois, perhaps in a misguided attempt to stay close to her grandchild, manipulated the situation. Along with her mother, Gloria, she quietly placed the baby with a relative. There was no paperwork trail, no formal surrender, no clarity, just shadows and secrets. For years, Gio grew up believing he was the child of a loving mother and a heroic father lost to war. When tragedy struck again and his adoptive mother died, Lois and Gloria stepped in, assuming the role of guardians. They were hailed as selfless protectors, never revealing their true connection to the boy they were raising. Brook meanwhile, lived unaware that the boy she'd thought had been placed with strangers was actually being raised within the circle of family. She was told her child was gone, placed safely in a faraway home she would never find. Lois's deception was calculated, but in her mind, it was merciful. She believed she was sparing her daughter pain, sparing Gio confusion. But what she failed to realize was that this illusion would only delay, and ultimately amplify, the heartbreak. The storm finally broke when Lulu, returning from a long period of personal recovery, decided to involve herself in a mystery she should have left untouched. Her relationship with Dante had long been marred by tension and mistrust, and perhaps seeking redemption, or control, she began to follow threads that didn't belong to her. By trespassing into Martin Gray's private affairs, she uncovered adoption files that should never have seen the light of day. Despite multiple warnings from Carly and even her own mother Laura to leave it alone, Lulu pursued the truth with blind determination. She wasn't trying to hurt Gio, but her sense of righteousness blinded her to the emotional landmines she was dancing through. And then came the nurses' ball. A night of celebration, of charity, of glamour. A night meant to uplift and heal. Instead, it became a public crucifixion. Lulu, driven by her own sense of justice, confronted Lois in front of half of Port Charles. In doing so, she destroyed not only the fragile veil of secrecy Lois had maintained but also Gio's very sense of self. He heard the words meant for adult discretion spill into the open like poison, revealing that the woman he called Aunt was his mother, that his lineage had been a lie, that the people who claimed to love him had built his entire world on fiction. There was no time to soften the blow, no preparation for the psychological fallout. Gio's identity, his understanding of family, his place in the world, all shattered in a single night. He hadn't asked for the truth. He hadn't sought it out. It found him, raw and weaponized, in a moment designed more for spectacle than compassion. The aftermath has been nothing short of seismic. Brook Lynn is reeling, not just from the truth, but from the betrayal of her own mother. Her anger is not rooted in the past, but in the years lost, the moments stolen, the child she never got to know. Dante, too, is stunned, his life upended by the discovery that he had a son he never knew, a young man who now resents him for being absent. Yet how could he have been present when no one told him the truth? For Lois, the consequences are profound. She had believed herself a caretaker, a protector, perhaps even a hero in her own version of the story. But the truth reveals a woman who made irrevocable decisions without consent from those most affected. Her actions, though possibly well-intentioned, were steeped in manipulation and a misplaced sense of moral authority. Lulu, on the other hand, has isolated herself from nearly everyone. Her intentions, noble in her eyes, were selfish in execution. She refused to listen, to consider the emotional fallout, to understand that justice without empathy is just another form of cruelty. She's lost Dante again, perhaps this time for good, and finds herself unwelcome in a town that once regarded her with warmth. But the most devastating figure in all of this is Gio. A young man who believed in the sanctity of family, who trusted the adults who raised him, who admired his roots and never asked for more. And now he has less than he started with. He is not the son of heroes but of deceivers. He is not the boy with a simple past, but the man with a complicated legacy. His trust is fractured, his sense of self dissolved into questions he may never answer. As the dust settles over Port Charles, the question lingers, not who meant well or who meant harm, but who bears the weight of responsibility. Was it Lois, whose years of silence robbed her daughter and grandson of a bond they might have shared? Or Lulu, whose pursuit of truth turned into an act of betrayal? Or is the real answer more painful, that both women, in their own ways, acted out of love but ended up doing irrevocable harm? In a town where secrets are currency and truth is rarely clean, the story of Gio is a tragedy rooted not in villainy, but in misguided love. And as the families involved struggle to pick up the pieces, one thing is certain: nothing will ever be the same.